You have to answer for this nerd podcast mafia, Dave. You fingered our podcast to be associated with Dork of All Trades and Geek Yogurt?
Ben, you got it all wrong.
Ah, that little farce you played with old Johnny. You think that'll fool the beard?
It's innocent. I swear on our podcast.
Sit down.
Please, the Nerd Podcast Mafia. They're good people. A respectable group of like-minded podcasts that support and promote each other. I listen to So Wizard and Fans on Patrol all the time, and there are a number of other great podcasts in the mix. Just check them out at nerdpodcastmafia.com for yourself.
You make me an offer I cannot refuse.
Thank you. Now leave the cake. Take a cannoli.
Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of three opinionated guys with mics and too much free time. Strong enough to stop a speeding movie rumor. More powerful than a bad comic book event. Able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have better things to do. It's Dave, Ben, and John. It's Superhero Speak.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host Dave.
And John.
Or Maroon, as you're calling yourself nowadays.
What a maroon, yeah. Only old people are going to get that reference. Bob can't, but you know.
And we have two very special guests, the return guests with us this week.
Returning champions.
Yes, returning champions. So right off the bat, I have to apologize to these gentlemen because the last time they were on, they were here talking about their pulp book Terminal. And when I promoted the book, I even called the episode The Terminal. And Steve was kind enough to point out that I was wrong.
I'm that jerk.
I'm sorry, but there is a misplaced article in this title.
Yes, misplaced. I like that, misplaced article. So, of course, I'm talking about Troy Brownfield and Steve Ekstrom. How you guys doing?
We're funded. I'm good.
Yeah. We're much happier than we were last time.
A lot happier.
Last time we were cautiously optimistic with just a hint of desperate. And this time we're bullishly optimistic with just a little bit of, come on, get us issue 2. So I consider that an improvement.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what's the good news? Just that you've got the first issue out and the second one's on the way?
Well, we're funded through the first issue.
Okay.
We had a basic goal of $4,000. We're just under 4,200 right now. It's been kind of like every Kickstarter has like a stall in the middle. You kind of have a lull period. We just started our little bit of a lull, and we'd like to kind of force our way past that so that we can make enough funding on top of our basic goal to give away the second issue for free.
Oh.
So yeah, that's kind of the thing that we're really emphasizing now, which people who supported us and did a great job of getting the word out. It's great because that first issue is there, and all of the D-Arm free digital comics were given to backers with the first issue is there. Mm-hmm. But we really want to get the word out that if we just get to 6,400, then the second issue also happens right away, and then we'll just proceed from there. So knowing that there's like a first issue, a second issue, and all these other add-ons that are going to happen is part of the thing we want people to know now, because just funding is great, but being able to take it across that second line would be fantastic.
Right. But we're giving people a return on their investment where they get the opportunity without having to spend any money to double up on their investment. So instead of getting one book for $10, you would get 2 books for $10. And it wouldn't affect your shipping. It wouldn't affect anything because we would have enough resources from getting other people to back the book so that we could literally reward people just for supporting us.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because we've heard from people in terms of, how can you do shipping like this? Well, we're crazy. No, we really just want to make the book. We really just want to make the book and get it in the hands. No one's looking to get rich off of this. I'd say the vast majority of Kickstarters aren't aiming for that. But some people, they have questions about the money and everything. And it's like, well, it's kind of low because we planned it that way. Our goal is making the thing. Our goal is getting it into people's hands. Nobody's going to get rich off this.
Right.
It's,
right.
It's the making of it and establishing a brand, establishing Terminal as an anthology, establishing Imminet Press as a brand, and that's the thing that we're really excited about.
So,
right, but breaking even would be good too, right?
Yeah.
So far, we're ahead of the game because this is kind of hard for people to wrap their heads around. Everybody that's working on this project, more than 20 people, are working for free. So we're not even in the hole. We've just got a lot of people that are working on goodwill who believe in the project because we're all hungry and we all want more opportunities for ourselves to make comics.
And we all wanted to work together, which is an important thing. It was most, and this is something we covered last time, but I think it bears repeating just if you don't know the backstory. The Terminal Project came out of a bunch of people who already wanted to work together and were just looking for ways to do it. And the vision of what originally was going to be a hardcover anthology and then what became the anthology series, the vision was Steve's. And that became the way that we were all going to work together on something. And so it was more a question of everybody saying, I'm in, rather than a question of what's in it for me. So everybody kind of joined forces and said, we're going to do this. And we're going to make all these other things happen along with it. And that's a big difference from other projects where some people are like, and here's an extra $1,500 because I need to make rent. That's not what we're trying to do. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of sweat equity put into this from a lot of people. So I'm very thankful to work with so many talented people and just to have, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy.
I normally have the Ed Matt Brady joke, but Steve was here, so
yeah, I'm here. I'll take that.
You're just a guy in a doorway asking a girl to love him.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going with that. Thank you. I'm
asking a girl to fund him.
Who wants some nerds to fund him? Yeah.
So, for those who may not have heard the last episode you guys were on, who wants to give us the elevator pitch of Terminal?
Take it away, Steve.
All right. Basically, we wanted to do a collection of stories, and then I kind of had the crazy idea of interconnecting the stories in like strange ways, where we're living in a shared universe with our tentpole ideas, and they kind of cross streams. In my story, for example, it's called Grizzly Plus Kinks. It's my lead male character runs into Troy's protagonist on the subway. And at one point in his story, I'm sure that there's somebody that crosses paths. In another story that's going to be in Terminal number 1, the lead character is standing on a subway platform, and several characters from within the anthology are just walking by him. And so we have this kind of nature where we're crossing the streams, so to speak, and we're kind of pollinating our fiction with each other's fiction, so it kind of gives you a larger scope in terms of these short little, these small stories.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's one of those things that's just didn't have to be there, but it was just kind of rewarding for us to do because it became kind of a fun way of figuring out how we were going to tie certain things in, whether it was, Justin Peniston's story has a recurring element of graffiti in it. And, that's one of the things that I wrote into my script, that this particular thing had to be on an alley wall. And so when you see that kind of thing recur, as a reader, you're like, oh, I get that. I see the, for lack of a better word, I see the Easter egg. I see how they're tying it together. Sometimes very obvious ways, sometimes not so obvious ways. And I think that as more installments happen, people will find that kind of reward of seeing how these things have all played through each other's, and not because, in one level we had to, but because we wanted to do it and that it was fun for us, and we figured it'd be fun for the people reading the thing too.
Yeah, plus we were trying to engage the audience with material that, you don't normally see. So we stayed away. There are some superhero-esque stories, but generally this was a pulp anthology, and pulp has so many subgenres that you can just connect to, that it just seemed like the smart money to go with that genre because nobody's doing it, one. Two, you have all these venues to venture into in terms of subgenres. Anywhere from like aviation fiction to weird sci-fi to suspense to crime noir, hard-boiled romance. Sports is a subgenre. We don't have any sports stories yet, but that would be cool if we did. But yeah, there's just so many things that you can touch upon without breaking anything. And I kind of learned, I had this epiphany that I'm sure that it's like a no-brainer, but superhero comics is nothing but a big umbrella that catches all that. It, with the guise of this, this mythological character being usually at the helm, these superhero characters. So there are a couple stories where there are superheroic types. There's a reference. I will say that one of the stories is kind of an homage to a certain Man of Steel. But it's very, and it kind of also plays on C.W. Cook wrote that story. It's called A Ghost Among Us. And it'll be in number 2. If we can get it funded, you'll get it for free. Plug. Yeah. And it's just, it deals with like a guy that is from another planet and the loneliness that comes with being from another planet. So there's more intimate elements to these short stories that can kind of shine through the mask of these homages or comparative, character types and tropes.
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting about it, too, is doing your own thing, is that you're able to kind of go outside the confines of what people think of as the standard way of telling the story. Because when you have, I've worked with a lot of great editors, but there are certain places that they'll say you have to tell a story this way or you have to tell a story that way. And one of the things I really enjoy about Steve's, which is in the first issue, Grizzly and Kinks, is the fact that he's got some really crazy stuff going on with people, kind of chatting online and different things happening. So the captions and the dialogues and the balloons and stuff, they kind of overlap each other in a kind of stream of consciousness kind of way, because that's in a way how we communicate now. People are texting, people are instant messaging, people are talking. And so all this kind of dialogue is going on, and you kind of see that on the page of Steve's story. And I think it makes it really interesting, but there would be some editors who'd say, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't lay those balloons over the captions. There's all these things that can't happen. And it denies the form and function of what he's trying to do. So one of the things that we're kind of doing is pushing against, some of those form ideas and really trying some different stuff. I don't think you're going to see kind of anything like Steve's story happening now. The only person I can think of that comes close to doing some of that kind of stuff right now is like Warren Ellis, where he'll do things, where he'll overlay the text and do some different stuff. Like he did it in Transmet a lot, where you'd have the journalism, the text of the articles happening on this side and then the dialogue happening on this side, and it was kind of counterpointing to each other. There's not a lot of that kind of stuff. So it does break forms. And it's kind of funny because one of the things, we always have these kind of ongoing discussions between us, and I've seen a lot of things lately. It was really funny. A prominent comic writer was talking about, you can't have a conversation where the first speaker is on the right and the second speaker is on the left. You just can't do that. And then Kurt Busiek, who's seen and done it all, was like, excuse me, and he tweeted about 25 different images of how it actually can work. And it was hilarious. But, Busiek is exactly right. It's all about what your vision of it is and how you make it work. And so that's one of the cool things I think that we're able to do, kind of in this independent kind of structure, is break some conventions and do some things in a different way that we only answer to ourselves. And hopefully people dig that.
That reminds me of a story. You know who Jim Butcher is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
Did you hear the story about his writing teacher telling him you can't have this thing called a Bob in a story where it's a guy that knows everything and does all this exposition. And so, of course, in the first book for the Dresden series, what does he have? He's got a skull called Bob that just does all exposition.
Right.
It has the answers to everything. So you're right. It's how you present it in your vision. You can make anything work. It just has to. You just have to, find the right way to make it work.
Well, there was.
It's funny that you mentioned.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it's funny you mentioned Jim Butcher because he's a big influence on the story I did. Just because I did a PI story that acknowledges that there's magic in the world. Basically, I was really influenced by, primarily when we started talking about pulp, and my gravitation in that case is toward noir kind of stuff. And I wanted to do a character solves his own crime kind of thing, like DOA, where the guy's been poisoned and trying to figure out who poisoned him before he dies. And I wanted to do something kind of like that. So my character has been cursed and turned back into a child. And so he's walking around with his oversized fedora and trench coat trying to figure out who the hell screwed him magically. And, so it's got that solve your own case kind of aspect to it, but also some kind of twisted humor and then the magic element. So it's a pulp story, but it invokes multiple traditions, like Steve was talking about. And Butcher was one influence, and Calvin and Hobbes, when Calvin would dress up as Tracer Bullet, was my other influence.
Yeah, there was a time where narrative voices were still prevalent in comics, and everybody remembers the long expositional narratives of like Chris Claremont in Uncanny X-Men. And around
focus
2000,
totality of my psychic ability.
Yes. And around 2000, when you see guys like the arrival of guys like Bendis was like the big one who made a stink about narrative voices. And I kind of want to go against the grain with that. I'm like when we entered the 20th century, we had the public self and the private self, and T.S. Eliot talked about this in some of his poems and stuff like that. But now we're in the 21st century, and we have a public self, a private self, and an electronic self, where the electronic self is this frontier of just wildness where you can be anybody you want to be. You can be as surly as you want to be. You can be as upright as you want to be. And this is a grifting con man meeting a serial killer on an e-dating site. And she's preying on him. And he doesn't even know it because he thinks he's preying on her. So there's this like mirrored kind of symmetrical dialogue that's going on in the narrative between these two people, that they're just thinking these things to themselves. Like at one point, he kind of just says, I'm going to get this chick, drunk, and I'm going to steal her purse. And she goes, he's probably going to try and get me drunk and steal my purse. And it just kind of goes back and forth.
So women are from Mars and men are from the state.
Well, I was wondering, did you interview John?
I like that
to base your story on, because it sounds like his dating life.
Now, I've dated. I've been on a lot of dates and met a lot of. I've met women on e-dating sites, but I've also encountered people who have been catfished. And this character is kind of, I was thinking, like, what's the most despicable guy I could think of? And it's this fat piece of shit guy who robs women after he goes on dates with them. And he's just this kind of like low-level grifting fence who's, kind of drifting through life. And she is this kind of enigmatic, like, she's kind of the hero of the book. Like, I want to have a heroine that's like frightening at the same time. Like, this chick is completely unpredictable, and she's very much in control of herself in her own surroundings, and he kind of finds himself drawn to her. So he's like like they basically meet in like the worst part of town on accident, and some stuff goes down, and in the middle of their date kind of shitting the bed, it's like he like looks at her and he's like, oh my God, this is the most magnificent creature I've ever seen. And she's just kind of like, I'm going to kill you when I'm done with these other guys. And, things kind of go from there. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's a lot of homage to like romance movies in this. And like, there's also kind of some reference to just hard-boiled crime. It's kind of visceral and gritty at times. I'm working with this guy, his name's Bob Rivard, who took a little break because he wasn't, he wasn't making the headway he wanted to make in comics, and now he's back. We kind of reconnected over Christmas, and he liked the script, and we're working on finishing that up. All the promotional stuff that we've done so far with Kinks, that's his artwork. The interiors are beautiful, and I'm so excited to work with this guy because he's so talented, and he deserves wider recognition like everybody else.
So, I actually want to go back to something you said and get your opinion on it. Where, you talked about how in the beginning of the 21st century, Bendis was a big person who was against narrative, and it just seemed like, he had success with the Ultimate Universe, and so because he was against it, then all of comics seemed to limit, having the inner dialogue on the page. And it seems like we do that in comics a lot. Like, ooh, in this instance, this was successful, so all comics are going to be like that. Do you guys find that to be true?
Well, it's it's kind of funny because, I mean, there's some other examples. I threw out Innis when we were talking about it because Preacher was like that. Preacher was, you know, had no thought balloons. And there were other people that were moving toward that, which is kind of funny because the thing that a lot of people were influenced by coming up in that group was Watchmen, which had copious captions, your Rorschach's Journal and other things that kind of carried that. But they decided at some point that was kind of passé. They were going to have all the, you know, inner life carried by expressions and let the artists do it. And, you know, that's definitely one way to do it, but, you know, it's not the only way to do it. I think that probably one of our big problems is that we allow like certain tastemakers to dictate too much what everything is going to be like over a period of time. There's always a place for whatever device works, you know? I mean, as far as the interior narrative goes, you know, some people don't like to break the fourth wall. You know, in Spark Shooter, I break the fourth wall with Jack, the manager, all the time. And I've made it kind of a point of humor that Jack does. But then on occasion, when I have people who are real people in the book, like my friend Jason Wren or myself, you know, I've made a joke that real people can do it too, because I wrote him in. You know, and like Jason at one point even says, you know, he breaks out in the middle of Jack kind of delivering some exposition. And he starts talking to the audience, and Jack says, "Hey, I can do that." And Jason says, "Well, Troy said I could do it." So, you know, it's that's just playing kind of against the convention, but mainly it's because it's fun, you know, mainly because it entertains myself. And I think like, okay, someone's going to enjoy that, but I feel like we've been kind of rigidly conscripted against doing certain things, and like so-and-so said it was passé, therefore we must not do it. Or the one guy who said, you know, thou shalt not have a speaker on the right prior to the speaker on the left. I'm like, come on, you know, there's ways to do that. Like Kurt said, you know, he's like, you know, there's a way to do everything. You know? I don't know if that's exactly the answer you're looking for.
I get what the whole thing with Busick and the left to right thing is mainly because of lettering and how we live in a left to right world as readers. But, you know, getting past that to the point where what I think is kind of counterproductive living in a postmodernist world of fiction is that, of course, we would have an internal dialogue because it's all about why at this point. So we're always trying to dig deeper into why, what motivates this character, what does this thing. And, you know, but we also we were introduced to whole new levels of trickery in our entertainment, like Christopher Nolan's Memento, and how the unreliable narrator, because of the way we broke up the structure of time and we made a nonlinear narrative, we've created this completely unreliable character that we don't know where he's headed. So I understand the importance of taking away certain aspects of having an internal narrative, but why throw it away altogether? I agree with Troy that tastemakers kind of made it so that there was just this, we shifted from third omniscient to third person limited across the board. And even then, it's very limited because when you use things like psychic distance to determine who is the character that you're inside the head of the most, you end up like with these guys where you still, like, I would love to write a story where I wasn't in somebody's head, but I kind of need to be in there so I can tell you my story. And I want a more intimate connection with my reader.
Yeah, and third person limited also gives you the ability to do a lot of stuff. Like you don't always know what the bad guys are doing, which going back, Jim Butcher does a lot. So you're always seeing it from the eyes of holy shit, what happened over the last 10 hours that wound up, you know, with these guys in front of me with guns. You can do a lot of neat stuff with that.
You know what's funny too is there are 4 great examples of well-used internal comics monologue that happen every week. And that is the CW shows, because all of their introductions are based on Wade's, repeated use of "My name is Wally West and I'm the fastest man alive" from his Flash run. I mean, every episode of the Flash begins with "My name is Barry Allen and I'm the fastest man alive." They're actually putting on display the interior monologue. You know, Supergirl recounts her origin. Arrow tells everybody why they failed this city. You know, the Legends. And Legends has even made it kind of a meta joke because they have different characters do it and everybody's style is different. And Mick, you know, when Heatwave does it, and Mick's like,
oh, these idiots, or, I'm stuck with these losers.
It's even a meta in-joke, to the point where The Magicians, the season finale of The Magicians this past week, the season finale...
Don't tell me yet, because I was gotten to that. I'm almost there.
The Previously On is hilarious. That's all I'm going to say. But most of the Previously Ons are just a collection of clips. The Previously On in the season finale is narrated, and it's freaking hilarious. And so you turn away those kind of devices when you just reject this kind of stuff. When you say that won't work, or and that's one of the arguments for independent books, is just the freedom to do what you want. I mean, that's. I find it interesting when you've got a guy like Eric Larson who's been doing Savage Dragon literally 26 years, and he's decided to finally make it like an M+ book. He's raising it to a mature book, because he's just to the point where he's like, you know what, this is what I have to do to make it interesting and to change the stakes and to make it different for me, because I've been doing it for a long time and I want to keep it going. Let's see how far I can push this. Let's see if I can test the boundaries. And that's all about him trying to realize what his vision is, and he's like, if the readers come along,
right,
even better. And like I said, he's got 26 years to look back on and say, I did it this way. If I'm going to keep doing it, I have to do something different. And
any rule can be broken, anything can be adhered to, as long as it's executed well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the example I always think of, it kind of bothers me, and it's, I know you're crossing mediums. It's The Dark Knight Returns, which has some of the greatest inner monologue stuff that was ever written by Frank Miller. And then all of that was taken out when they made it the cartoon movie, because, we don't want to have a voiceover. We don't want it to be like a film noir. And it's like, yeah, but you're taking away a lot of...
Oh, yeah. That was disappointing for me. I really wanted it to be a cartoon noir. Frank Miller's the reason I write comic books. So when that cartoon came out, there was a certain level of disappointment that I had. I was excited that it was like 4.5 hours long, but it was not, there was just a level of depth that was just absent.
Yeah. And probably one of the best lines in the entire thing is when, that great, full page shot of Batman and Robin descending on the Joker, and Batman saying, I've laid awake at night planning it. There's nothing wrong with you. I can't fix with my hands. I'm like, that's peak Frank Miller. That's peak Batman. I mean,
Yes, that was one of the best moments of Frank Miller's writing career, and that's something that's inherently masculine about Miller's style that people then turned their nose up at like 15 years later when All-Star Batman came out and he said, I'm the goddamn Batman. Everybody was like, oh, how dare you talk like this rugged manly man with grit. And I was like, that's the way I imagine Batman talking.
To be fair, they might have been more pissed that he said that Robin was retarded in the line immediately before that.
Yeah, that's okay. You're right. Grown. Yeah, there's a lot of people who hate on his stuff, and I sometimes want to crawl through Facebook and punch them in the face. So I'm going to put that out there.
It's
channeling my inner Frank Miller.
Yeah, it's not, it's a tendency, that's another 21st century thing, that to like anything new, we have to, I was going to say discard or crap on everything that came before it. I mean, you see some examples of, people talk about whatever the great new TV show is, and they have to turn around and turn on whatever the last great new TV show was. Having a great new show doesn't, mean that the other show wasn't great. It just means that the new one is newer. I had an interesting conversation with one of my students about this recently. About, I told him when Jump the Shark came out and people had the chance to rate and like things that never jumped. The show that had the never jumped rating the longest for several years on the site was Magnum P.I. And a lot of people wouldn't think about that, but Magnum did what Magnum was so well for so long that most people thought it never jumped. And when they think about Magnum P.I., they don't get what it was. They see these pictures of like curly-headed Tom Selleck with like kind of 80s hair and Hawaiian shirts, and they think it was silly, and they don't realize it was the first show to realistically deal with what being a Vietnam veteran was about.
Yeah.
They don't realize
there were a lot of episodes that were really deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's easy to dismiss things out of hand without really looking at them. were people talking about how silly, certain old comics were, but they weren't silly at the time because it was the new thing then. It was revolutionary. And, like when Perez and Wolfman got the new Teen Titans Baxter book going, and when the first issue, when they all have the shared nightmare about Raven, and, Dick and Corey are in bed, and, like, it shows them sitting up, and it's like, okay, they've got the sheet over them, but they were clearly sleeping together. They were clearly naked. I mean, it's an abject acknowledgement that Nightwing and Starfire have a sexual relationship. In 1984, so that was kind of a big deal.
Claremont and Byrne did the same thing during the Phoenix run with Jean and Scott on top of that.
On top of the mesa, yeah.
Yeah. And I was, I was 8, 9 years old. I knew what they were doing. And I was but at the same time, that elevated me as a young reader, and it made me appreciate the effort that these people were putting into elevating me to reading something more than just a comic book. They elevated the entire medium by putting adult situational stuff in tasteful ways into a book. I mean, that book was about racism for so long, and people just, they thought it was intense, but they never really said what it was, this is really about racism. And it's unfortunate now that the book isn't really about racism, unless you're looking at the artist who's putting, stuff into, anti-Semitic messaging into the book.
Well, now the book is kind of, and the state of X-Men for a long time is kind of heartbreaking to me, because it was my favorite thing growing up. X-Men was the thing that really, I was into comics and stuff, but it sealed me as a fan for life. And it's one of those things now where, my sons are 12 and 10. They're older than I was when I was reading X-Men, and they're interested in various things. And the X-books are not a thing I can point to them, not because it's too old for them, but because I think that there's other stuff that's better for them to read. And that's kind of heartbreaking. It'd be kind of like, how happy I was to introduce them to the Beatles. It'd be like if the Beatles made like 24 albums instead of 10 and the last 14 sucked. It'd be like, I'd probably feel the same way. You know what I mean? And
you do you like our 40-year-old fanboy rage towards the X-Men?
I was going to say,
this was not what we signed up for, guys. Do you want to hear me talk about Watchmen some more? Because I've been talking about that this week.
I was going to say, though,
Batman.
Anti-Semitic messages aside, it's definitely, X-Men seems like the book where, like, they've lost their way, and let's try this. Let's try a team of all female characters. Let's try the gold team.
Like it's not as iconic anymore. And I think that there's so much mutant on mutant violence in most of the books that it kind of precedes the messaging anymore. Like it's not about the same stuff anymore. These people aren't, these heroes that are never truly thanked for saving the universe over and over again. They're always reminded that they're mutants and nobody loves them. So, but now that's kind of gone, and you still have, but there are elements of that, but it's not as palpable. And now there's also marketing decisions being made to show other characters versus them, for whatever reason. Like I can't read an Inhumans book. I can't. Well, not interested.
I'm frankly tired of superheroes fighting each other.
Me too.
We are, 10 years out from Civil War? And it's, and the movies notwithstanding, because, that stuff came to the movies late and it'll go away. But, we just did we just did X-Men versus Inhumans, which followed Avengers versus X-Men, which followed Civil War. I'm kind of tired of heroes fighting. Not that there haven't been some interesting stories. Not that the new Avengers, Namor versus Black Panther through line wasn't interesting and extremely well developed. But, I'm just kind of tired of it as a conceit in general.
Right.
Which, I think maybe we're seeing our way out of that, but I think the X-Men caught it worst of all, because they were kind of continually put in the position of antagonists. They've got to fight the Avengers. They've got to fight the Inhumans. They've got to fight those people. And it kind of makes it a drag, to see, the good guys always fighting each other for years and years. And, I think that when you get into that point, like I said, the movies are different because you had 12 Marvel movies before Civil War happened, and they openly acknowledged Civil War was to break the Avengers down before Infinity War, so they have to get the band back together,
right,
to face the big threat. I mean, it's Empire. Civil War was Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah,
you take the heroes down to the lowest point, so that makes sense. That's thematically sensible. Batman versus Superman, less sense, but
less.
but I kind of see where they're going. Like they decided to build the Justice League out of that fight. That's fair. That's an interesting spin on it. But I imagine that after the reaction to that and things going forward, there's going to be less of heroes fighting in the DC movies. So you know what I mean. Not that I wouldn't be amused by a Avengers Guardians initial tussle in Infinity War, just like I think everybody would be, kind of entertained to see like Hulk go against Groot or, Thor Ragnarok. I mean, Thor and Hulk get their chance to fight because they miss Civil War.
Exactly.
So that's okay. That's fair. That's fair. But but apart from that, I think it's a phase that they work their way out of. Like this phase in the comics has been going on for 10 years.
Yes.
And it gets tiring because the sheer amount of just to get them fighting, just to give a reason to get them fighting, it's like it's all so contrived.
Yeah.
It's not even like sitcom contrived. It's like you have completely forgotten the last 5 years of your life where you were best buds with this guy and now you're going to fight because he looked at your woman wrong or something. It's just, it is just so bad.
Well, I think we all know. I think we all know that Captain America isn't going to end up always being a Hydra agent. We all know this is a cosmic cube. We all know this is a cosmic cube story.
Steve, call us spoilers.
That is forever.
I know. But it's like the hate that Nick Spencer has caught for just trying to be creative and do something that would rile you up. Yeah. Guess what? Mission accomplished. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
Oh, he's happy that you're reacting this way.
Yeah, the new spin on that is the one where they're like, Magneto is a Hydra agent, and that kind of cracks me up, because if I were Magneto and the Nazis wanted me to be on their team and they didn't know, I'm totally joining Hydra, because I'm going to kill them all horribly later.
Well, I got corrected today.
And then I'm going to shove the Eiffel Tower into places.
Apparently, I got corrected today by a couple of different people because I posted something that said on Facebook, I was like, yeah, you kind of lost me if Magneto's a Hydra agent. Thumbs down. And then like 3 guys popped up in the thread and said, he's not actually going to be a Hydra agent. He's going to be one of the leaders of the Hydra resistance. He's just on a villain variant cover that is not, apparently people misinterpreted all these villain variants to be that these were all Hydra agents. Magneto is apparently a villain that's going to be against Hydra, but he's still going to be a villain.
I still think they missed the boat on that one. If I were Magneto, I would totally join Hydra. Too. And I would start killing them horribly. It's like, this is for Auschwitz.
In Acts of Vengeance, he only joined Acts of Vengeance so he could have access to Red Skull. If you go back and look at all those issues where they're in groups together, there's always a picture of Magneto glaring at Red Skull. And if you go back, my favorite issue of Captain America of all time is the issue where it's just Red Skull and Magneto fighting. And Magneto beats the crap out of the Red Skull. And he leaves him in a hole in the ground and locks him up with like a couple jugs of water. And he's like, yeah, see ya. I win. So, thanks for, killing my family.
So you guys bringing up the Captain America Hydra agent and everyone talking about it, you're reminding me of, when we had Tom DeFalco on the show and he talked about the Clone Saga. And,
well, that sucks.
And the funny thing is, he says, he was, this was 1997, 98, somewhere in there, and he's in line to register at a comic book convention, and to sign in basically. And there's people in line and the people at the desk, and they're all talking about the Clone Saga, and he said as a writer, that's what I wanted, I wanted people to go out and talk about what I wrote. So mission accomplished. Like it or hate it, I got people talking about it,
Yeah,
That's exactly the way you have to do things. Infamy and fame are the same exact thing with when you write
sides
stuff.
of the same coin.
with the Clone Saga, it's kind of with the Clone Saga, and this is the recurring theme, I think, of all of these different kind of fan outrages. I'm not trying to diminish like what happened with, for example, X-Men Gold, because I mean that's legit. That was some crap that guy pulled. But the outrage over plots, you know, it seems to be this ongoing mental resistance to the notion that things aren't forever. None of this is forever. The New 52 wasn't forever. You know, none of it
wasn't even for a few years.
Well, here's the thing. You hear so many people, and we work in an industry where 80% of the people who buy these books think they can do it better than the people that are making them. So I'm going to be a bad guy here, and if you're going to complain to me about a comic book, go out and make one and do better. If you're not, shut up and read them, or go out and make better comic books, because otherwise you're just going to be unhappy. Go find somewhere else to spend your money.
Fine, I will.
There's also all right, good. Steve inspired some.
Yeah. We just lost $1,000 off of our Kickstarter.
Well, no, I think that's fair. It's fair to have opinions. You can have opinions and make work. You know, I mean,
yeah.
It's kind of interesting too. Like, this is the other big one. I kind of made a joke about it earlier, but like Batman 21 came out last week, part 1 of the button, and man, there are some people who are super pissed that Watchmen is involved in the DC universe at all. And my kind of response to that is really, there is no Watchmen without the Charlton characters. Watchmen only existed because DC bought the Charlton characters and invited Alan Moore to pitch something.
Right.
And he's like, okay, you know, the Peacemaker gets murdered and we find out he raped Nightshade. And DC's like, okay, but we want to be able to use these characters later. So why don't you make an analogous group and tell the same story? Absent the acquisition of the Charlton characters by DC, Watchmen doesn't exist. I'm not saying that Moore did not get a bad deal from DC, but that was not a story that he was carrying around inside of him for a long time. It was a story dependent on the pitch. What's revolutionary is the way he told the story, but it didn't happen without the other element of them buying those characters and wanting someone to do something with it. So when they use the characters, I understand some people have some discontent about this being like a creator-owned work and everything, but absent that element, those things never happened. So I think that it's morally more complicated than a lot of people want to make it. They want to make, you know, Moore got screwed into the only story. But, you know, I'm always more interested in the fact that so much of Moore's stuff is appropriation of other characters. Whether it's, you know, repurposing Batman as V for Vendetta or repurposing the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, right up to the point where he's using Harry Potter in the end of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was an active character under copyright. You know, I mean, that's, you know, that's a whole other thing. So, I mean, all things being equal, it's kind of crazy to think DC wouldn't use Watchmen if they still kind of had access to that and could make money from it. You know, your moral mileage on that may vary, but I certainly understand Watchmen never would have existed if DC hadn't bought Charlton and given him the opportunity to pitch. It just wouldn't have happened.
They're going to have to be careful, though, because there's only so many times you can use Watchmen to fix your own reboot.
Yeah, right?
I think that's going to be a one-trick pony. That's right. That's going to be a one-time gig, especially with Dr. Manhattan possibly being like the root cause of all this stuff. I mean, as awesome to me, I'm excited. The Watchmen is like a technical manual of how to make good comic books. From the way it's broken down to 9-panel grid to the type of storytelling with the level of depth in the storytelling. That is a template for how you make a good comic book. And anybody that wants to make them should study that book.
Yeah, and I want to make the point real quick, because this is the thing that's going to get lost in Batman 21. Everyone is going to endlessly debate the Watchmen element, and they're going to miss the fact that Tom King wrote a badass Batman story. Just the encapsulated idea of the Reverse Flash is there to beat Batman to death, and Batman has 60 seconds to stay alive until the Flash gets there, which is brilliant. That is a great ticking clock story that uses the 9-panel grid brilliantly. So whatever you feel about the Watchmen thing, leaving that out, that is an excellent Batman plot.
Yes.
It sounds like the plot of a death battle from Screw Attack on YouTube, where they make two guys fight, but they don't have any time to prepare. And if Batman had an hour to prepare, it wouldn't be a contest. But if he's already fighting for his life, the
immediacy, yeah, totally.
I just thought that was great. That's literally something we haven't seen before. I mean, that's what people say that they want to see, right? I mean, I can't think of a story where Batman was fighting a speedster and only had 1 minute to survive, stretched out over, 18 pages of story. That was new. And like people say, there's no new Batman stories. That one was. Now, everybody's probably going to bitch about the Watchmen part. It's like, at least they gave us an incredibly entertaining Batman bit within the framework of that, I mean, so.
Maybe.
Your mileage may vary.
But back to Terminal.
Yeah. So a question I had about it,
we did.
It's a pulp anthology, so it's a collection of stories. And have you set a limit on how long each story is, or how does that work?
They were all going to be 16 pages. Because of the nature, I was trying to come up with a creative way to reward people who backed us. And I was using my story as a tentpole for a larger project. The first issue, and I'm breaking this to you guys first. The first issue of Terminal number 1 is going to expand to 48 pages, and we're going to have what's called the director's cut of Grizzly plus Kinks, which is going to be 22 pages long. And it'll be the lead story in the book. And it's kind of basically because we also had 2 really generous donors, backers, who gave us each $500 so they could be written into the story, because Bob and I are going to take this places. They're going to be written in as kind of these 2 corrupt cops that are introduced in the epilogue of the story. Right. So there will be more Grizzly and Kinks to come. It's just going to be some time because we're going to be working on some other things. We're probably going to shop Grizzly and Kinks around to a couple of publishers after Terminal hits. Because Imminet is a brand. It's for us to publish together so we can share our work with our audiences. I may only have a couple hundred fans that look at Cannibal Island. Now that it's down, nobody's looking at it. But when it goes back up, I'll have my audience to cross-pollinate with Troy's audience, to cross-pollinate with the Hunter Black audience, and, anybody else that's connected to Imminet Press. So, over the next couple of months, we're going to have our website go up. We're going to have several. Spark Shooter's going to be on it. Marco Lopez's Massively Effective is going to be on it. Hunter Black is going to be on it, which they've got a huge following online. And, we're going to relaunch Cannibal Island on there with Bob and I. I'm totally restarting the comic with a new artist to give people a better chance at having access to something I believe in. So, but that doesn't mean we're like completely hemmed in by our own brand. So Troy can take anything that he does at Imminet and pitch it to Boom, pitch it to IDW, pitch it to Image, because we're basically like a digital studio together versus a label that's going to publish, floppies that go into the Diamond catalog.
Right. Cool.
Hey, guys, can you may need to pause this or something. I need to step out for a second. I'll be right back. And then I just have to deal with something in the house real quick, and then I'll be right back. So you guys can keep talking if you want to edit me saying this out. All right. I'll just be right back. So Steve,
Mark, minute 49.
Yeah, yep. I'll jump in and say something snarky when I'm back. I'll be right back.
Actually.
Okay, Steve, he's gone. Now give us the real lowdown.
Well, Troy has a video of me in an Eastern Bloc country with a certain orange-colored man. And it's very bad.
Oh, well, no wonder you won't say anything about it.
No, Troy is a champion of our efforts, and he's the reason I got in the door to the party. He was very nice to look at some reviews I wrote on MySpace before Facebook was big, like 10 years ago. And he gave me my first opportunity to write book reviews for Newsarama, with Matt Brady. And then Matt and Troy kind of, gave me a little bit of guidance, and I kind of started writing for Newsarama. And so most of my success, the basis of it, can be attributed to Troy Brownfield. And I'm very grateful for his friendship. And, we just kind of have the same vision for where we want to go with stuff. And I really hope that as we progress, that he gets his due. I think he's very talented. He's got a wealth of stuff that's published through Zenescope and, Dynamite. Blood Queen is pretty fantastic. And I think that if people like horror, they will definitely like that book, and they should like seek it out. Like the omnibus, I think, is sold out on Amazon now. So it's worth looking for on comic book websites. He's an incredibly talented guy. He's got a much better sense of comedic timing than I do. So he's got like better funny stuff in his comics. So I envy him in that way. And, sometimes I think about poisoning him, but that's just me.
Wow, that video must be really bad.
It's pretty bad.
No one, Troy. No one. Oh, welcome back.
Nothing.
No one's going to poison you.
Great.
But yeah, no, he's been kind of my right hand man on this project. I don't even want to put it that way. We've been doing. Now, I mean, like he does just as much as I do. Like I do a lot of the production stuff, which is just me tinkering in Photoshop and Illustrator a lot. But he does a lot of like motivating of other people that are involved with the project. He's done a lot of talent scouting for stuff. He's put me in contact with a lot of people. We're adding some people to the project. Like originally it was just going to be 10 stories. We're looking at 12 or 13 stories now in a sixth issue. Because we wanted to add, a wider range of talent. So we have, Erica Heflin and Laura Newbert and Carrie Tupper joining us. And we're still looking for an artist to work with Carrie Tupper. So they've got a wealth of talent amongst the three of them too. So there's just so many people involved in this project that it's kind of a marvelous thing, even though people kind of turn their nose up at anthology books. I can, give them the finger right back.
So that's a question too. With there being so many people, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but is there any, what's the proper way to put this? Is there any herding cats with, getting things together?
You must have read my mind, because that was literally on the tip of my tongue. It can be a little bit like like mostly the big problem is that we all, and everybody's guilty of this. When we want to get an email back from somebody, we don't end up getting it back fast enough. So there's this moment of instant gratification where I send out a mail to 20 people and I just want somebody to just pat me on the head and tell me I'm going to be okay. And it doesn't happen. So I just kind of like end up, drinking heavily. I'm kidding. Or, it's more of overeating, but, like I just, I get frustrated just like anybody else, because you're managing 22 people. And so you kind of want people to respond quickly. Nobody answers their emails anymore. So it's like I go on Facebook chat and I hunt them down and I talk at them for 5 seconds. And then, I see that they read it and then they don't respond. And I'm like, you MFer, I'm going to crawl through this computer and strangle you. But it goes away after like 30 seconds. My nerd rage, my editor rage, my publisher rage goes away and it subsides. And then there's no Hulk incident for like 2 days. And then I do it again. But no, it's difficult, but at the same time, so many of these people have given, their work, their effort, their own sweat equity and their own time while they hold down jobs, while they have families. And I commend them for that, because it's not easy. And, there are people that, there are guys that are going to school that are in this book. Bob goes to school. Our artist from, where is Nicola from, Troy?
Croatia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's an art student, and his stuff is tight like a tiger, and he's 18, 19, 20 years old, and he's pumping out these like beautiful pages that we're going to get inked.
3 years working for us.
Yes. And I don't know if you've seen his Instagram, but This guy, Nikola Sezmika, I think, I can't pronounce. He's got like so many little hyphens and cool things in his last name. He makes my last name look boring. And he's learning how to digitally ink, and he's posting these beautiful panels of his artwork that's been digitally inked. And I'm like, man, this kid is gonna be somebody. And he's young. I mean, I'm 40. I'm grasping at straws here, trying to break into an industry that's constantly getting younger as I get older. So it's, I want to find people like him to help him, because, as much as people say that exposure isn't what you should get paid for, exposure matters. You have to, and a lot of these people don't know how to access editors. They don't know how to talk to anybody. They don't have any business acumen. And I willingly give this to my friends and people who work with me, because I want to see people succeed with me. Comics can be for everybody. And the more of us that are doing well, the better things are going to be for everyone, and the industry will grow and we'll all get work.
So join us and expose yourselves.
Yeah, exposure. Yeah. Please join us in exposing yourselves.
I was going to say the important distinction for young artists is exposure is important, but don't let anyone offer to pay you in exposure.
Well, okay, everybody's working for free on this book. And I've had to make the exposure argument to people. In fact, the first 2 stories I got published were to a guy that said, look, I work for Newsarama. I can help you get exposed. I don't have any money either. We're looking, the thing is that the guy, when Will Wheaton says something like that to social media, guess what? That dude has money. He can say shit like that. I don't have money.
He's 10 years old.
Yeah. He's had that, there's been a study about people in creative endeavors. If you have money, you can actively take gambles. If you don't have money, you can't gamble on taking creative risks.
Yeah.
So, you have to kind of make a trade. Like I soured to that argument really quick, because I've met people who start fresh out of art school thinking that they should get a $300 page rate. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. I understand why people make that argument, but if you look through the variety of people who made it, it's almost always people who are firmly established that make that argument.
Yeah, so I say screw you to all them, because yeah, you can say that now that you're set up. But when you weren't set up and you were working in the back of the convention, you were trying to hook up with exposure too, and that's where it becomes hypocrisy.
No, and I get that, and I totally understand that side of the argument, but I think there's a point too where there are young people who, by the time they're on their 5th, 6th project, they still really haven't made any money off of it.
That's true. And part of that is on them for not becoming more business savvy. And I'm not making excuses for anybody, but I have friends, one of my collaborators that's going to be in the book when he works with Vito Del Sante, Antonio Brando, great guy. He'll admit to you, he doesn't feel comfortable engaging people on the business side of comics because he doesn't understand how American comics work. He's from Portugal. And so he has this kind of like lack of experience on the business side of things. Yeah. And there are so many people in comics who have zero business acumen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of funny because for an industry that in some ways is so transparent, like you can go to a con basically any weekend of the year and talk to a pro. Mm-hmm. But nobody has the same story. Nobody has the same way they got in. Nobody makes the same amount of money. Right. Nobody's getting supported by the same people. Some well-to-do companies have to go to Kickstarter to fund projects because the extra money isn't there for the project. I mean, it's a thing that happens. You know what I mean? And so we know that there's a lack of money, but at the same time, sometimes you find yourself in a really curious place where you kind of constantly are reproving yourself.
Right.
And there are times you get kind of tired of it. Like I'll use Zenescope as an example. I've written a lot of stuff for Zenescope, and I kind of feel like at a certain point, I'm kind of tired of like repitching stuff. You know what I mean? It's just with those guys, not everybody. I mean, obviously, even though I've written a DC thing, like if DC asks me to pitch for something, I understand that. But the nature of if you've done like 40 or so stories for somebody, at a certain point there should be an element of they know what you're about, and so then it doesn't, get tiresome. But the fact of the matter is, unless you're one of the top, I'll say 30 folks on either the writing or drawing side, it's just constantly reproving yourself to people. And so it's kind of hard when you have someone who's coming in and it's like, how do I break in? Even people kind of like, me or Pat Shand or some of these people, we kind of be like, we break in like every week.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like you have to.
There's absolute truth to that, and even on the business side of it, where Troy mentioned that there are companies on Kickstarter, that are established that have the scratch that can go to printers and get nickels on the dollar printings versus what we're having to pay somebody to print our book. Those guys are putting books together. And I personally have a little bit of a gripe about it, but that's me struggling to make comics, and I need to take the lens. I have to take my personal feelings and put them aside and look at the business part of it. Over the weekend, a very prominent old publisher from maybe the 90s and the aughts called me a beggar on my Facebook wall and decided to try to argue with me about the way Kickstarter provides an ability for people to pre-sell books. And I mean, it's pass or fail. So, I mean, if we don't get funded, we don't sell, nobody loses any money. But basically you're pre-selling things to people. And he told me I was a beggar. This guy is also a dude who, owns a company that he tried to take advantage of a bunch of people, and then he badmouthed all these people on my Facebook wall. I'm not going to name his name. People can go research it and dig it up if they're listening to this. They can go hunt for the thread on my wall where this guy kind of had a meltdown. But that guy didn't have any money either. He just had a wife with a really good job.
Wow.
So, dump. I don't mean to be a dick, but don't call me a beggar. I'm just trying to make a comic on, Kickstarter.
And I think it would be different if it was the first time anybody did it, because the first time that you try something like this is suspect. But Kickstarter and GoFundMe and Indiegogo and everything have all been around long enough that someone shouldn't get slapped with that label because they're just the latest person doing the project. If you go and look at Kickstarter, the most furiously active segment of Kickstarter is probably comics, maybe music after that. But comics is always loaded with stuff. I mean, if you just stop and look at Facebook and Twitter in the course of a week, or just go to the hashtag Kickstarter and look for just comic stuff, there's hundreds of projects going at any given time.
Right.
We had 3 of our team members fund projects in March. 3 out of 20. They were the only 3 running them, but they all funded projects. It just shows you how prevalent and pervasive it is. It's just going on all the time. They went from one Kickstarter to the next thing.
This medium is changing, and right now it's really hard to be somebody on the fringe with the way the economy is, the way the state of our job, our employment situation in America. 1 in 5 men are unemployed. And if I'm unemployed, I'll just go out and say it. I haven't had a job in over a year, and I look all the time, but it's not easy. And so I focused all my energy into doing something that I wanted to do with my brand. And, it's hard because when you're out there and you're trying to get things made, nobody has like a money tree in their backyard. And that doesn't mean that people who don't have money shouldn't be allowed to try to do things. So when somebody like that guy on my Facebook thread says that, I just kind of go, what am I supposed to do then? Just let you keep making comics so you can make the money? Because, he's been pushed out because he's become too unmoving in his ability to adapt. Comics are becoming boutique. Okay. Kickstarter, even though there are hits and misses with crowdsourcing, there is now a boutique side to comics that caters to the globalized internet market. If you can sell, look at Robert Kirkman. How many copies of Walking Dead are sold in other languages? Now imagine doing that on your own dime at your own time. My stepfather speaks fluent Russian and French. Don't think I won't take advantage of that and make it so that my comics are in other languages so I can sell them digitally in a foreign language, because I will do it because it creates a revenue stream, because I'm just industrious.
Well,
you know,
and here's another funny side to that, right? That and this dovetails into one of Steve's favorite things because as you know, Matt Brady of Newsarama, Matt Brady is in the book. He's one of the creators.
Oh,
And
Captain, my Captain.
Oh, Steve is always on me and Matt that says, you guys have more name recognition than you know about. And I always say, yeah, I doubt it. And he's like, oh, yes, you do. But the funny thing is, and I had to go to Brazil to find this out. This is the funny thing. Paulo Yonami, who is a fantastic artist, and he did covers for my Blood Queen series at Dynamite, and he's done art for a number of projects in the States. He belongs to a studio, House 137, in Brazil, with a lot of other fine artists, including Cuber Ball, who drew Blood Queen vs. Dracula. Anyway, so those guys were doing an anthology book, a zombie book called Zombie Side, in which their artists were basically doing a bunch of stories. And Paolo said, hey, I want you to write a story for me. At the time, I didn't know I was the only American guy in the book. And so, everybody, all the men, all the women, artists, the other writers, the inkers, letters, everybody is Brazilian, basically. A couple of people from a couple of other places, but they're all through the same group. And I didn't find this out until later, which is pretty funny. But it was funny when Paolo sent me the cover, and it's got a bunch of the characters kind of in a mashup fighting a bunch of zombies, and at the bottom it's got 4 names. It's got Yonami, Brownfield, Ball, and one of the other dudes, and I'm like, my name's on the cover? That was nice of him. And then when I get my physical copy of the book, and it's got bios of all the creators in the back, my bio is first in Portuguese, which was kind of hilarious because, obviously Brazil. But the funny thing was, Paolo put his biography under me. And I'm reading this and I'm like, is this because they know my stuff? Is it because Dynamite and Zenescope sell books in Brazil? Because I know they do. Was this enough of a thing that they put me first? Because they can't be that nice.
There's a certain level of imposter syndrome that we all suffer from. Yeah, because we're all trying to get somewhere. Because we all, I know Troy would work at Marvel or DC if he was given the opportunity. And
that's troy.brownfield@gmail.com.
There you go. Holla. But no, we all live with a certain degree of imposter syndrome where we're constantly doubting ourselves as artists. So there's, when my friends are telling me, they're like, they kind of have this kind of bleak outlook. I'm like, you MFers have been published by Dynamite, Zenescope. You guys had a Batman comic. I haven't had any of that. And it's just marketing yourself. And there, you have to take the time to kind of be your own biggest fan. And it sucks sometimes because I feel like sometimes I spend so much time talking about myself that people hate me. But I know that it's just because I have to be geared that way to try to find success. You have to kind of propel yourself even when no one else is backing you. You have to persist at times when everything is against you. And if you don't keep persisting, you will fail.
If you don't show confidence in yourself, other people won't be able to be confident in you as well.
Absolutely. Who's going to buy my book if I tell you the story sucks that I wrote? You know what I mean? I'm gonna tell you that I'm gonna melt your eyeballs, and you're gonna be like, I gotta see if this guy's gonna melt my eyeballs, and then you're gonna be like, well, this guy kind of tricked me into giving him $5.
So you guys have hit your first goal on your Kickstarter. How much? This episode is going to go up Wednesday, so as of Wednesday, how much time do people have if they want to donate, and what are some of the stretch goals?
Is it 17 days?
Okay. We are now on day 15, and we're this is the halfway mark today. We are at 4,100. We've had money come in, Troy. High five. We're at 4,220 right now. We have 125 backers. We have to figure out a 200 person backer. Once we hit backer number 200, we'll give them some more comics. We've already given away 2 full graphic novels. I'm going to be putting together a collection of failed pitches and short stories with script samples to kind of show people what they can do with the things that they have. And I've repurposed the same short comic that I published the first time 4 times, and I've had it published. Those are 4 writing credits. It doesn't matter that it's the same story. It's in 4 different books. That means that I have range. So I'm going to talk about that in my little collection. That's free. We're giving away an 8-page story and a digital wallpaper that's a wraparound of the cover for Terminal Number 1 by Bob Rivard. He sent me the breakdown for we're creating both of our covers of our comics throughout the series will interconnect. So the pictures, all the covers, even with the wraparounds, will open up and make one larger image with all the characters from the book.
Through all of the issues. Through all
right.
of the terminal.
And all of the variants will lay side by side, and each variant will feature 2 or 3 artists that are veteran artists. The first issue features Rob G. from The Couriers and Teenagers from Mars, and Larry Watts from Robin Hood from Zenescope. And he did the Army of Darkness stuff for Dynamite. And we also have a pinup on the back cover from Valentin Ramon, who does Dave for IDW. And we're very fortunate to have them. The next issue, and this is where we're at with the stretch goals. If we make, here's another piece of news.
$2,100.
I'm about to drop another piece of news with you guys first as an exclusive. We're going to drop our stretch goals down by $800 each. So as of tomorrow, Terminal Number 1 is officially 48 pages, which I think I told you guys that earlier, but I'm stumbling over myself. The next thing is that we're going to move the next 2 prints that we're going to release will now be at 4,800, and the expansion to the second issue of Terminal will now be 5,600 instead of 64. So we still want to get to 64 because we can then afford to sign all those books and send them all over the United States and to get them signed and to give you extra incentives like giclées and stuff like that for free. But basically, we're going to take about $2,400 and distribute it differently to try and raise less to give you more. And right now you get 2 full-length digital graphic novels, a 48-page book from me, an 8-page short from Mark and Jerome, plus the wallpaper, plus the books. And then if we hit our goals, you double up on the material stuff. If we have 4 prints, you'll get 8 prints. You'll get 2 comics. You'll get, if you bought if you bought a comic and the variant, you get the comic and the variant for number 2 for free.
It's about 180 pages of digital comics.
250.
250 with the second one. It's 180 from the first
one. No.
It's
250. It's 250 just on the free stuff you get right now. Like I did the math. I didn't believe it, but Ghost Lines and Knowledge are almost 200 pages by themselves. So Mark and Jerome are giving away comics. And
because I was going on the 180 in my head. So it's 250. Yeah.
It's near 250 in free content, digital, plus the 40-page comic or 48-page comic. And so we're giving you 300 pages of comic. If you give us $10, you're going to get 300 pages of reading material.
So how much more will you give away if we keep you on for another half hour? It seems like every couple.
I will take my shirt off.
I'm glad this is an audio podcast.
You don't want to see that. Yeah,
he's lying.
Rim shot.
Steve hasn't had his shirt on the entire time, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I have a shirt on. I'm just not wearing shorts. I'm Porky Pigging it around my house.
Personally, I wouldn't have done the rim shot. I would have done the Wilhelm scream for that one.
I don't have that on the soundboard
I need what you really need is The Price is Right. Ba-bum. Failure.
So,
yeah.
All right. So to get that image out of everyone's head, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn. Ooh. You say I sound shocked. Something new that we're starting on the podcast. What we're doing is we're doing a poll like on Sunday because we record Monday nights, and just a question to our fans, and then we'll talk about the results on the podcast. All right. So this is an easy question. You guys can both answer this. You don't have to pick from any of the choices that we gave. What movies are you most looking forward to this summer? The options that we gave were Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Wonder Woman, or other, and people could write in a response.
Steve?
Oh, I know what movie I want to see. It's the new Lily, the chick who made A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night with Jason Momoa and Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
That's the movie. That's the movie I have to see. Hold on. It's called it is called? The Bad Batch. Holy crap. That's going to be the best movie of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my movie. Otherwise, as a comic book fan, every year is good. And it's a Star Wars year, which is every year now too. So what can you not be happy about? Like, I don't care if Wonder Woman is terrible. I'm excited and I get to take my 11-year-old daughter to it and she's going to love it. And that's what matters. It doesn't matter if I like it or not. It matters that my kid likes it so that we can keep selling Wonder Woman comic books to girls like her.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, The Bad Batch, real quick, the official logline is a dystopian love story in a Texas wasteland set in a community of cannibals. So there you go.
Holla. I'm all about it. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Now, for my part, I'm also interested in seeing that. I'm interested in Atomic Blonde, which looks, like the female John Wick, which I completely dig because, like Charlize is awesome anyway, and that looks just perfectly suited to her. And again, awesome. But I gotta say, my whole family is looking forward to Guardians Volume 2, probably more than anything. As a family, we loved the first one. We all dressed as Guardians characters for Halloween the 1st October after it was out. The kids were just freaking out at the trailers. Probably, and it's a cheat because, it's not summer, but probably after that, Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Because holy crap, it's so funny, and it's interesting, like the transformative power that Kyle, my 10-year-old, has been walking around with Immigrant Song playing out of his phone for
awesome
days, which is great. Which is like, man, I never knew all I had to do was put a Thor trailer in front of you to get you into Zeppelin. But I'll take it. But that's that's one of the things I think that Marvel has kind of perfected. It's hilarious to think that the teaser trailers become events into themselves, and that they can, blast a song to the top of iTunes just by dropping a trailer. I mean, because, Fox on the Run occupies the Spirit in the Sky place from the first Guardians soundtrack. It's only in the trailer. It's not in the film, but it is on the album. Mm-hmm. But when that trailer dropped, Fox on the Run bam, #1 on iTunes. It's just hysterical to think that Marvel's got that kind of power at this point.
Right.
With that. But yeah, I mean, come on. Guardians just looks like a ball. I mean, how could it not? There's just...
Well, of everyone who answered the poll, that's the #1 at 49%. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. 24% for Wonder Woman. Only 18% for Homecoming. I was kind of shocked at that.
I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, third reboot. You
Yeah.
You get a little
of buyer confidence. Yeah.
But that's also before May. That doesn't come out until July. After Guardians has been out a month, ask everybody again. They're going to be hyped for Spider-Man.
I'm excited. Yeah. Like, this is the best iteration. This is our Spider-Man come to life. I know I don't like Sony having the rights to it, but I'm glad that they're playing ball with Marvel at this point because they're not going to make good movies. Those X-Men movies aren't getting any better until they start paying attention to the way Deadpool was made. The authenticity is what matters. Tonal accuracy and being true to the subject matter. And I think this Spider-Man is going to finally get it right to a greater degree than the other two franchises did.
Yeah.
They can get that with the X-Men movies just by throwing an R rating on them, right?
Well, I don't know. Like,
I think the thing that Steve's talking about, I think that some people, when they talk about Deadpool, it's not necessarily about the rating, but it's like Deadpool was R because Deadpool should be R.
Right.
But, the fine details, like the costume, the attitude, and everything, that was right.
Spot on casting. Robert Downey Jr. sold Iron Man. Spot on casting.
Yeah, the great thing about the first two X-Men movies was even if the costumes were a little different, the characters were true to the characters.
Right.
And then they started kind of losing their way. And I think First Class as a movie is a good movie, but it gave me such a headache because, like, let's have Havoc be in the 60s and all of this kind of stuff. And it was just, I was and it doesn't bother the casual fan, but it bothers the crap out of me.
Right.
So
again, those things aren't made for us, and we have gripes with them because they don't match up with what we know to be canon. And I don't have a problem so much with the films as it is that we're educating the general populace with stuff that is throwaway, so that they come to theaters and they think they're an expert. And I'm like, you've never even picked up an X-Men comic book and you've watched a couple movies, and I become comic book guy from The Simpsons. And I have to like bathe myself in, sports for a week to kind of find, because I get mad. I get so mad listening to amateur fan night. And I know I shouldn't get mad, and that makes me a huge douchebag. But I get I hate when people talk out of turn about stuff they know nothing about. Like, I shut up when I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's funny. Go ahead.
And then at work or at family gatherings, you're the de facto guy. Like, oh, I really like that movie.
Yeah.
Like what comics can I read that was based on? Or, is that how it happened in the comics? It's like, just go read some.
And then 3 weeks later, I stopped talking, and then they're like, God, I just was ready for you to end. But I didn't need to know about the Mutant Massacre and everything about Mr. Sinister.
Yeah. What's really funny is, I was just talking to Connor, my 12-year-old, earlier tonight. I was explaining the how X Factor was originally going to have Dazzler in it, and then they decided to bring Jean back, and how everybody had to have a hand in it. How the Avengers found the pod, and Byrne had to draw her coming back, and FF, and all those different things that happened to make that happen. So it went from this one little thing of shooters here's an idea to sprawling out over 4 books that weren't connected to get to Jean coming back, and everybody was all hyped to have Jean coming back and forgot about, oh yeah, he's married. Scott's married. Yeah, and so all the different fallout from that. Connor was kind of enormously amused by it, but it's some of those little things that you don't expect them to do that. You don't expect them to replicate that. But Marvel, as a filmmaking entity, has gotten so good at replicating the feel of the stuff that even if you can't point to something that's 100%, you can at least point them to something that feels enough like what they watched.
Right. That's the huge difference right now between Marvel Studios and Warner Brothers, is that they are not nailing their own property down. And when I think of Superman, I'm in that same camp as guys like Mark Waid. Christopher Reeve will always be Superman to me. And the just the majestic nature of those old movies they still are better than what they've put out. The first 2 Superman films, crush Man of Steel. Crush it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just eye-opening that these guys can't backpedal off of grimdark. Get off of grimdark. Make things that make people happy. Look at your television programs. The Flash. Rob G is a guy that I went to high school with, and he went on to make some comics with Brian Wood and Rick Spears, and a couple other people. He is one of the most jaded ex-comic book fans there is, but he is like a little girl when it comes to watching The Flash. And I hope he listens to this, because he is giddy like a girl when The Flash has new episodes. And he came to me, he was like, I can't believe this is so good. And I was like, I sure wish that Warner Brothers paid attention to how good it was, because this is one of the smartest television shows, sci-fi shows about time paradoxes there is.
Well, I tell you too, Reeve, Reeve is awesome, but my other favorite Superman going right now is Tyler Hoechlin from Supergirl.
I like him too.
That guy nailed it.
And, Man Crush Monday. All right.
Well, he nailed it succinctly and in very few scenes, but probably the best one is when he saves that family and kind of,
winks at him.
Winks at the kid. I mean, that's perfect.
That's Superman.
That is Superman. And it's so easy for us to say, oh, that's Superman. But that was. I mean, that guy got it. He came in just...
Because he feels like Superman. Who cares about those stupid gold things that are holding his cape on? It's the fact that he feels like Superman. I want Henry Cavill to feel like Superman. He's a good dude to play Superman. Get him out of a grimdark movie and let us feel some majestic wonder again.
Well,
Wait a minute, what is this grimdark thing? I didn't know we were bringing Transformers into this.
Oh, okay. The whole idea, the whole notion of grimdark it's the byproduct of Dark Knight, Watchmen, Punisher, Wolverine, all of these lone wolf or darker stories that have perpetuated throughout comics for like the last generation of creators. We have painted ourselves in a corner because we've made these loner types the hero of every misanthropic kid in the world.
That's kind of funny that's one of the things that ironically, but people joke about it, but the Fast and the Furious franchise has squarely put the family aspect of the characters from the first installment. And you can say, people are welcome to make fun of it for whatever reason, but, they have emphasized that, it's completely anti-loner. It's, which is kind of interesting. But the thing with Henry Cavill, I feel like he's been done a disservice because that is one charming cat when you see him in things like Man from U.N.C.L.E. and stuff. And it's like, he is not given material to work with.
Nope.
It's just like, look away, brood, watch Pa Kent die, and it's like, if they gave him just a little bit of lightness, he could do so much with it. Because I believe that he could be a great Superman. I just don't think that they've given him the tools for it yet.
I agree, and I think Ben Affleck is an awesome Batman too. But he's not. I don't think that they're servicing him right either. And I think it's apparent in the fact that he wants to get out of the job now.
Well, my favorite bit in the Justice League trailer, like the second trailer, is when the Flash says, "What's your powers?" and he says, "I'm rich." That's a great line. I mean, it's really kind of true in a way, because
unfortunately, Batman wouldn't say that. Tony Stark would, and that. I like that line too. I like that moment too. But I was like, man, they are really trying real hard now at this point to kind of Tony Stark him.
And you know what? You know what though? Dying and coming back from the dead can only make Superman happier.
Well, they're saying that he's going to be reborn in this story, and that he's going to be the Superman we want. And I want that. I don't like. I'm going to give money to go see Justice League. I'm going to go see this movie. But I have a lot of trepidation, and Batman versus Superman did not help me as a consumer want to see more of their movies. I left out of there angry.
My wife hated it. She has cheerfully and good-naturedly seen superhero movies for 20 plus years, man, and she did not dig Batman versus Superman. And my kids were largely just confused by it.
Right.
Like, Connor really ripped into the story sensibility in a way I've never seen him do for a 12-year-old, which was kind of funny. Cause he was just pulverizing plot holes and things, and I'm like, wow, dude, and he's like, it made me mad. And I'm like, okay, well, that's probably not the result you want, is an angry 12-year-old and the wife who's like, I'm not really interested in Justice League if it's going to be anything like the other one. That's kind of an unfortunate side effect.
Yeah. When you have kids saying they don't want to see a superhero movie, that's not a good superhero movie.
Right.
It's not, period. And the thing is that none of us want to see these things fail, not in our heart of hearts. I mean, we can talk all the shit we want to talk, but when the chips are down, every one of us has a little kid inside of him that wants to see these movies. And to have to have my little inner child feel, cheated after Batman versus Superman. And I will say this, I totally didn't realize that both their moms' names were Martha, and I actually liked that moment. And I was like, holy shit, that's poignant. And then I was like, but man, that is a one-trick pony for a movie. And I liked it, and then I hated it as a creative person. And that part of me just kind of reined back in. And yes, the quick cuts in the first 20 minutes of that movie were so bad that it was disorienting. And Zack Snyder doesn't make good movies. He made one good movie, and it was called 300. And that, was a remake of an old movie from the 60s.
Hey, you take that back. The Dawn of the Dead remake was pretty awesome.
Okay, yes. I enjoy I think that Dawn of the Dead remake is better than the original. in
All right,
terms of
gentlemen.
talking about vaping consumerism.
Real
So-
quick, one other thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say one other thing on the Warner bit. I think that too, like Steve says, and it comes down to marketing and like getting your message out. But I think they've kind of done themselves a disservice with Justice League because nobody knows what Justice League is about other than they get together and they fight somebody. They haven't clearly defined the villain. I mean, we all kind of know it's Steppenwolf, but nobody else knows who Steppenwolf is. There is nothing that really points out what that is or what the consequence of Steppenwolf is that inevitably leads to Darkseid. Whereas when Infinity War comes out, Marvel will have spent 19 movies educating you about the Infinity Gems, Thanos, and like Thanos comes to Earth. Holy crap!
They're trying too hard to catch up. They're trying
the
way too hard to play
Guardians have
catch up.
together to fight Thanos. That's your pitch. That's
Right.
now everybody on the world gets what that means now. And that's kind of the battle has already been decided in a lot of different ways.
Right. So yeah, I mean, we're at an hour and a half, so I
Nice.
think this might be, it's not a marathon, Troy. So I was going to say, speaking of the little boys inside of you, if somebody would want to reach out and touch them online, what's the best way they could do that?
Oh, that was bad.
Oh,
And that's where we'll end
And
it.
now we're being monitored by the government.
And the church.
Steve,
well,
show us,
mostly
Steve, show us
Facebook.
on the internet where to touch you.
Yeah, show us on the internet. I am really easily accessible on Facebook. Like, I love when people contact me on Facebook. Add me on Twitter. It's, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's Steve_Ekstrom. But yeah, I'm easy to find on Facebook. We have the Imminet page, which is, www.facebook.com/weareimminent. And then we also have, the terminal page, which is www.facebook.com/terminalogn. So yeah, add us, contact us, talk to us about comics. I'm sure Troy will talk your face off, and I definitely will.
All right, so your little boy is easy to touch. All right.
Whoa. Yes.
Yes.
Now,
and,
Troy?
Well, Troy Brownfield on Facebook, at Troy Brownfield on Twitter, and I've been hanging around a whole lot with all the terminal stuff, so you'll, see
Yep.
that.
And go read his comic, sparkshooter.com.
Yeah, it's good enough to make people want to poison you.
Yes, I will poison him. He's got a lot of Hey, he's got more content online than I do. I'm jealous.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're at we're 212. And there's a new page on Wednesday. So we're in the 10th chapter now.
Wow. Congrats.
So we've been doing it a long time, and if it's different, just if you're into something that's funny and has some long-term character work, that's the main two things that I'm trying to do with it. And so just check that out if you're interested.
Oh yeah, and our boy Eric Palicki, No Angel #3 hits stores this week. So pick up a copy
if you're
of that.
listening to it on Wednesday, No Angel #3 in stores.
In stores
co-written
Wednesday.
Co-written by Eric and his sister Adrian, who you might know.
Who's this Adrian you speak of?
Well,
Yeah.
They know who it is.
her boyfriend was a prize fighter, and no, it's just
Oh, okay, good. From Philadelphia, right?
that's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Don't talk too good.
All right. Cool. So I think that's a good place to put a pin in it. So to everyone listening, definitely go check these guys out. The link to their Kickstarter is in the description of the episode. So is the link to their Twitter and Facebook pages. So yeah, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it's easy to remember. It's not there. It's just imminent.press will take you right to the Kickstarter, or you can do bit.ly/fund-terminal1. Takes you right to it.
And like these guys said, 250 pages of content for a $10 donation. Where else are you going to get that deal? Nowhere but from these guys. So check them out.
The bargain bin at Barnes & Noble, but it won't be as entertaining.
I'll just cut that part out.
Yeah, maybe.
So go check them out. And until next time, boys and girls, don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week. Are you strong enough to stop a stupid movie rumor?
Are you more powerful than a bad comic book event?
Are you able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have got absolutely nothing better to do?
Then join the conversation by connecting with us on Facebook, Twitter, Slack, and other social media platforms.
And help us get our capes from getting stuck in the door by becoming an official Patreon patron.
And if you just want more content from us, don't forget to check out our website where we post way more than we can discuss here.
So what are you waiting for? When you join our fight, everyone wins.